And we... it's not showing yet. It's not showing yet. There it is. We are live on the PHU Dynasty podcast. This is episode 57. My co-host Sean O'Shea back again for another ride. We got quite a bit of things to talk about today in terms of the survey and our league awards. We're in the midst of Senior Bowl and Shrine Week. We have a Super Bowl matchup. We got a lot going on right now, Sean.
Yeah, a lot going on for an off season, huh?
Yeah.
We're not. Are we talking about the Senior Bowl at all?
No, that's gonna be next week, just because it's like not quite done yet.
Yeah.
So once they get through the practices in the game, then we'll talk about it next time.
Some shitty practices. Apparently, all of the decent quarterbacks were on one of the rosters.
Yeah, they put them all on the North roster, which I thought was really stupid because
that's so dumb.
Yeah, I think they wanted Nix to go head to head, right, with Penix, so that kind of makes sense. But the other team has just no talent, so it's just I don't know what they were thinking on that, but I guess
Spencer Rattler.
Yeah, I mean, say what you want. He's not horrible, but he's not good either. It's a weird year for quarterback because the good ones just are not at the Senior Bowl, and I guess Nix might be a first round pick, but not for me at least.
We'll see. That's a fun debate for later in the offseason, I think.
Yeah, probably. So, all right. So we'll get started on today's podcast. This is we're going to start off with a little game based on some of the responses that we got from the survey. So I asked everybody in the league who was the MVP on their team for the season. So I'm going to see if Sean can guess them. The only person I think we did not receive anything from was Dustin. So you got 9, not 10. So Dustin might have been the odd man out. I don't know what he was up to, but we didn't get a response from him.
Here, let me look at his team real quick. I'll just tell you who his team
MVP was for the year. I was thinking Devontae Smith or Olave, which is not good.
I'll go with
James Cook, maybe.
I was going to say James Cook. I think that's a good one.
He played pretty great down the stretch.
He wasn't super highly drafted in redraft this year, and I think he outperformed his ADP.
No, he was I picked him this year in redraft, and I think he was an 8th round pick or so. So I'm pretty happy about that.
All right.
Let's see, we're having some connection issues here. Did you say something, Sean?
I was just waiting for you to roll with the first team.
All right. First team it is. Let's start. Well, we're not going to include you, but I can try. No, I'm not going to say. Yours is interesting because you could have gone a couple different ways.
Yeah.
You said Raheem Mostert. I could have argued Kyren Williams or Lamar.
Tyreek.
Or Tyreek or Amon St. Brown.
I went with Mostert. I was basing it off of who outperformed expectations the most.
Yeah. So that's fair.
Kyren, obviously, but I traded for Kyren after he already started doing something. So I feel like Mostert was the right choice for that one.
Yeah, Mostert. I mean, just from a perspective, is nobody thought he could make it through 3 games, let alone be a top 3 RB for the year. I mean, he was scoring touchdowns. I think he had at least 22 touchdowns, I think, for the year.
It was 20 or 21.
It was a lot of touchdowns. That's exactly what you're looking for. So that's a pretty easy pick overall. So let's start with the Toronto Battle Axes. Who did you think their MVP was?
Battle Axes. All right. Let's see here. That's probably one of the harder ones.
His is an interesting one.
Oh, team. All right.
Definitely a different team build.
I guess I'm going to go with Derrick Henry just because he was around all year. Yeah, I'm going to go with Derrick Henry.
Derrick Henry is the correct answer.
Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, Henry, he didn't have a down season, but it wasn't quite what we're used to maybe from him. I'm going to pull up his stats because I'm curious. So he finished RB5 and had 1,200 yards and 12 touchdowns. So that's a down year for him, which is kind of wild.
But it didn't even feel that good during the season. Like unless you had him on your roster, I don't think you knew. You would assumed he did like under 1,000 yards and like nothing.
Yeah, he averaged 4.17 yards per carry, which was by far the lowest of his career. So I could see, if you're watching, how many people were really watching Tennessee games this year? To be honest with you, probably not many. It just felt like whenever you saw him on like red zone, it was like some long run, but you didn't see the day in and day out of him just grinding the whole season with 280 carries.
I mean, he wasn't playing with anything in front of him, and he's got a lot of miles on the tires.
Yeah, he's had 4 seasons with 300 carries. This year, his overall carries went down from 349 to 280. So it was definitely a different more competition this year too with Tyjae Spears. They didn't really have anything before that. I think it was like some ridiculous mixture of like Julius Chestnut and all these Jagaloon backups in Tennessee.
Andre Dillard? Who was the other running back on that team?
Andre something. I think you're on the right path.
Yeah.
I was thinking like Antonio Allen from back in the day, just like some like really bad, some really bad backups. They've had some of the best backups, like Jagaloon backups of all time. Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
Started Julius Chestnut. You can't beat that. Like, how are you gonna find a better name? Surprised he's not on Dustin's team
Bishop
right
Sankey back in the day.
Oh, Bishop Sankey, of course.
Former Dynasty first-round pick.
God, I love Bishop Sankey. I really loved him too. So did Scavelli.
Wasn't he like the 101 like that year in drafts? Like, I'm pretty sure he was like a common 101 pick.
He was well thought of for sure. I think he went 105 in our draft or 103.
It was early.
There was a couple actually. This is Sean. This is why I did the draft history on the Discord, is so I could look it up for things like this, because I hated going into the whatever it was, the Facebook page. All right, so here we go. Let's see. Where is that draft? That draft was a long time ago.
I can vamp for a second. So I thought about going with Diggs for Scavelli's team, but like after like week 7 or 8, like he really fell off. And it was a lot of that on his team where it was like guys that did good sections of the year, but there's nobody that was really super consistent from what it looks like. So I imagine that's probably how he got to Derrick Henry being his team MVP.
Yeah, I mean, Diggs would be the shoe-in if he actually like just performed the whole year. I'm looking at the 2014 draft now. So this was that insane wide receiver draft. So 1-1 was Alex picking Sammy Watkins. 1-2 was Mike Evans for James. 1-3 was Kelvin Benjamin. Number 4 was Jordan Matthews. And number 5 was Bishop Sankey. So that was
running back.
First running back at 1-5. And then
maybe that's what I was thinking.
There were 3 very good receivers: Odell Beckham, Brandon Cooks, and Devontae Adams were taken after Bishop Sankey. So it was just, what a weird first round that was, because it did produce incredible players, but they were not in the slots you would think. So
bunch of
all right,
there too.
So we went through the battle axes. Now let's go to the armadillos. Who did you think I picked for my MVP?
I think I would have to go with Nico Collins.
Nico Collins is also the correct answer. Unbelievable work so far. He was the number 9 wide receiver for the year. Almost just about 1,300 yards and 8 touchdowns, and he missed 2 games with injury. So could have been even better. So, I mean, just from a week in, week out perspective, for my team, he's one of the main reasons I even got in the playoffs. I mean, without him, with that consistency, him and Ayuk were kind of just like the 1-2 that I needed every single week to at least give me that floor at like 8 points. And he had some huge blow up weeks. He had a 26-pointer, a 29, a 21, and then a 26 to finish out the year. Just basically everything you get asked for from a guy that I thought could have been toast after this year.
Just a lot of consistency throughout the year. Like you got players like you had like Addison, who started off like on fire. Rice, who
Cousins got hurt.
Strong. Yeah.
That was it.
Achan with just like the craziest performance of the year.
Didn't even play him.
Blowout. They didn't play him. So yeah.
Nobody did.
I can't imagine anybody that had Jalen Hurts this year was like super excited, even though he wasn't bad for fantasy. It was definitely a down year for him.
Yeah, I mean, he was the number 2 quarterback, and I feel disappointed, which
Yeah.
is just not. It's not normal. But he was great on the ground. I mean, the 15 touchdowns, that's what floated him all year. So 15 picks, though, is not what you want to see, I'm sure. So next year we'll see if Hurts can get a little better with a different offense. So, but yep, Nico Collins was my choice. Ayuk was in consideration too, just because he was just so consistent all year. But now let's go to the Lambs MVP. I think this one should be somewhat easy.
Well, I mean,
No, that's actually not true. Not true.
You know, if he wasn't a Bucks fan, it would be a lot easier for me.
I think there's 3 choices.
There's 3 choices. Really, if he wasn't a Bucks fan, there'd be 2 choices, even though Evans had such a great year.
It's true.
Shit. I think he might have still been maybe a little upset with the injury at the end of the year, so I'm going to go with CeeDee Lamb.
The correct answer was Christian McCaffrey.
Fuck.
So he's 2 for 3 so far.
It's logical.
It just makes sense. I mean, he was just such a
he had the RB1 in the wide receiver one. It's like
if it was my guess, like without seeing this, I probably would have said Lamb just because he's the face of the franchise. So
yeah, there's that.
I thought
maybe he would pander to his fandom and maybe go with Mike Evans just for the.
I mean, realistically, like who was the most valuable, like the player that boosted the team more than any other player? You could argue is Mike Evans because of the expectations around Twitter and most of the football world weren't nearly what we thought they should have been. I mean, Mike Evans was never gonna drop off like that.
Yeah, I mean, like McCaffrey finishing as RB1 is like so ho hum, but like it's probably more or less like the way he finished as RB1, like just so significantly better than everybody else. Which is why I can see why he would pick him as an MVP in that case.
Yeah, I mean,
there's 3 was so good at the end of the year, so good.
Yeah, I mean, CD was a complete monster at the end. I mean, all 3 of those guys could have been a selection no matter what. So don't feel too bad about that 2 for 3, Sean. You'll be all right. Let's go to the next one. It's the Philadelphia Plague. Dan Schwartz
injuries this year.
Very much so.
I think
the answer is not J.K. Dobbins.
Poor guy.
Poor guy.
I guess. I mean, he did have the QB1. I guess everybody else kind of missed a little bit of time or had some disappointing parts of the year. I think I'm going to go Josh Allen.
Josh Allen is the correct answer. 3 for 4. And one of I'll say it again, the wrong answer could have gone 3 different ways. So this is a good selection. I mean, yeah, Josh Allen was, QB1 as solid gets, exactly what you're going to get out of him pretty much every year at this point. He's the staple of the Plagues organization right now, him and Justin Jefferson, and he's going to ride that train as long as it goes. So
I'll tell you what, though, this guy, Dan, could really use a running back in his life.
He really could.
It's tough out here.
We'll talk about that a little later. I think I have some of our things that we could talk about. So let's go to the Muskrats from Muskegon. Who do you think they chose as their MVP?
All the way up there in Michigan.
He's up there.
There's no way he doesn't pick Puka Nacua, right?
The answer is Puka. He's a 4th round pick. He sets the rookie record for wide receiver yards. I mean, he's completely insane. Like I just love how it turned into, start as a meme where it was just such a ridiculous name and selection. Because I'll be honest with you, this is the one thing I will eat my crow. I did not know who this guy was on the night of the draft. So I didn't even try to look into him.
He was going to be one of my supplemental picks because I didn't think anybody was going to take him in one of the 4 rounds. Because I did know who he was. And I liked the ambiguity in
They didn't really
Los
have
Angeles.
anything, so it made
They didn't have
sense.
anything.
It did make sense. But just the player itself, like I didn't watch a single snap of his film all year long, so I just didn't even register to me. So, and I didn't really see him getting like hyped up on like any like bigger Twitter shows or accounts or anything. Like I just didn't see it. So
Have you seen they clipped out like the part of the draft night for the Rams where they took him?
oh yeah, where it was
Did you
like
see that?
they were in that like house that they were in for the draft when they were talking about him. I mean, they
Uh-huh.
nailed a lot of picks recently. The Rams, they have done a very good job with limited capital, let alone
Yeah, I mean,
not high capital.
can you name who their last first round pick was?
I don't think I could right now. It would have to be.
I can
Was
tell
it
you who it was.
was it Aaron Donald?
No, it was Jared Goff.
Oh god, it's 2016.
Yeah.
Jeez,
That was
God,
the
that's a
first-
long
that was the
time
last
ago.
time they had
Fuck
their
them
first pick.
picks. That's what they've been saying.
Between the Stafford trade, the Ramsey trade. Yeah.
That's insane. That's
Yeah.
crazy. 8 years
So
since
this
their
will be their
last first
first
round
time
pick.
having their first round pick in almost 7 years? 7 drafts?
I mean, it's starting to catch up with them a little bit. They definitely need like a youth movement, but they've done such a good job with these late round picks. I mean, their pass rushers have not been high picks outside of Aaron Donald, and they've been very good. And they're just a solid team. They're doing everything what seems to be, I mean, as good as you can possibly do with no capital. So making the playoffs again this year. So anywho, Puka, phenomenal pick.
As long as they don't take any running backs, I'm fine.
which you never know. They're crazy. So all right, next is the cheese fries from Chile.
Chile cheese fries. This is a good one.
It is a good one. I think there are definitely a few different choices you can make here.
Man, I don't even like. It's hard to remember who even started the year on Tibbs' roster.
Well, he started with Pat Mahomes and ended up with Dak Prescott.
Dak. They traded him.
So I will say Dak is not the answer just because he.
It was I don't imagine anybody would pick like a partial year player. I'm gonna go with DJ Moore.
DJ Moore is incorrect. The choice was Rachaad White.
Oh shit! I skipped right over him when I was looking. That's a good choice.
He's a very skip overable player, to be honest with you. Like it's just there's just something about Rachaad White that just feels so like mid. I don't know. Like it's just
my eyes. He's right next to Josh Jacobs, and my eyes just went directly to Jacobs, and I'm like, oh, tough year.
Yeah, but you didn't even think about like a what do you have RB8 on the year? I mean, it wasn't pretty though. I mean, he had 270 carries, 6 touchdowns, 990 yards. He averaged 3.6 yards a carry. Added a lot in the receiving game though. He had 64 catches for 549 yards, which is awesome. But he was a do it all back. I mean, he was on the field all game long.
I thought maybe you would go with Moore just because he was the wide receiver 6 quietly somehow.
Yeah, that's kind of shocking.
So
it looks like so I'm counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 straight weeks of 10 points or more for Rachaad White, which is pretty amazing.
That's impressive.
I mean, that's just very consistent. And he had a 23 in there, a 20, a 19. Just pretty good considering. I mean, those are great numbers considering he only had 6 touchdowns for the year. So I can see why he picked him here.
Yeah. I'm looking at DJ Moore right now. It's very boomer bust.
Yeah, I'm going to look at Moore right now too. Oh, yeah. I forgot about the 43 burger.
Yeah,
that'll do it.
A wide receiver finish, a wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, and wide receiver 3.
Wow.
Year, so that'll do it. Pump those numbers up.
A career year with Justin Fields at the helm. I mean, it's got to only go up from here, right? With Caleb Williams, maybe. Like, who knows? Could be even better. That was an interesting trade, by the way. I'd like to point that out too. Is at the time, it was I believe it was for Brian Robinson and Khalil Herbert, or was it who was it? I know Herbert was involved.
It was Brian Robinson.
I thought he was on James's team though. That's a couple of years ago though, wasn't it?
Yeah, he's been moved a couple times.
I mean, yeah, more for Herbert and Robinson. I mean, that seems pretty good overall.
Yeah, I mean, if I knew Moore was going to get moved, I probably would have held him a little higher.
Right. At the time, though, he was stuck.
He was in fucking purgatory in Carolina, and I was just I was over it.
It was a good move for Tibbs, though, considering at the time when he made the trade, he was only 24, and he's still only 26, despite being in the year or being in the NFL for 1, 2, 3. This is his 6th season, so next year's his 7th year, and he's going to be 27. That's crazy.
It's got the
So
Mike Evans.
yeah, he started at 20. Pretty wild. So yeah, I think you could have gone either way on those. I mean, more being a 6 wide receiver. I don't think anybody really had that in mind heading into the year. All right, so next is the Baton Rouge Bombers. Might have a hard time finding an MVP on this team, unfortunately, with the season that they had.
I got it between 2, I think, but I'm gonna go. He finished the year strong. I'm gonna go with Pacheco.
I think you might be on the wrong team. Bombers is.
Oh, I'm on Vince's team. Oh shit.
I'll save your answer for Vince's.
Okay. Yeah, wrong team. Shit.
Yeah, Baton Rouge. The old Justin Senior special.
Sorry, Justin. I guess I'm gonna go with Kenneth Walker.
The answer was TJ Hawkinson, which is
what the fuck got hurt?
Somewhat surprising.
He was great before, but I didn't.
I was a little surprised myself. I mean, he did have a stretch of the season where he wasn't really doing all that much, but before he got hurt, he was doing pretty well.
Did he say that while standing in front of Kyle Pitts? Did he tell him?
Well, we'll get to Kyle Pitts. We'll get to Kyle Pitts, but I think maybe this is a motivational tactic that's being used to hype up a disappointing player. Perhaps that's the case.
Wow.
But I mean, I would have made an argument for Kenny Walker as well. I would also make somewhat of an argument for Jaden Reed. I mean, he was kind of a no expectations kind of guy. Just wide receiver 18.
Would love like a league vote on like who likes what Green Bay receiver the most going into next year.
We should hold that. We should organize this. Dynabook start gearing up those or oiling up those gears. This is an idea for you.
What a group, man! In like 2 years' time,
they have and the tight ends too. Mm-hmm. Like they have so much just like talent at their disposal, and none of them are on any sort of contract right now. It is impressive what they've done. And without really picking any of those guys with premium picks, like first round picks, I think almost all those guys are
the highest pick. I think
like a high second. Yeah, I mean, Watson was a high second as well. I think. Yeah. So I mean, they didn't spend a first on any of these guys.
Wicks was a 5.
Wicks was a 5, and Dobbs was also a 5.
5. Okay.
So I mean, they've just done a great job. Even like Bo Melton, like out of nowhere, was like pretty quality for them too. It's like they just have just such an unbelievable cast.
If you were to tell me this guy's name is Bo Melton, guess like what sport he plays professionally?
Bo Melton. I would have picked
I would have said maybe like relief pitcher in Major League Baseball.
I was gonna say like golf.
That's a good one.
Maybe like a good. He seems like a husky golfer. just
NASCAR driver.
Yeah, NASCAR driver would work. See, I was thinking like Bubba Watson, Bo Melton. Yeah. They kind of go together.
Definitely from the South. Loves to make left turns.
Go real fast and turn to the left. All right, let's go to so we kind of went to the Lionheads here for a second. So you're going to stick with Pacheco for that one?
Yeah, sure, why not? It was between him and Montgomery.
So this one was a little bit of a surprise because he did end up choosing a part-time player in Dak Prescott. So
that's fair.
Which was fair because he was the most valuable player. Justin Senior left a comment saying he had just as hard of a time finding an MVP. So that's we agree, Justin. We'll get him next year. We say it every year, but we'll get him next year. He did pick Dak, and Dak's frankly probably the best choice here because I mean who was helping his team the most during the time that he was actually on the team. It had to be Dak with how disappointing the rest of the team was this year. So makes perfect sense to me. All right, let's see. So the Elk didn't give me the MVP, but you gave him James Cook or one of the folks
Yeah.
earlier, so we'll skip past them. All right, so now that concludes our little MVP guessing game there. So let's get into we can let's keep the discussion on Kyle Pitts. I'm gonna pull up the most disappointing players as voted by their own team owner. So Kyle Pitts was voted the most disappointing player on the Bombers, and I can't disagree. I just can't. I mean, it seemed like he was playing injured from everything that kind of leaked out towards the end of the year.
What was his injury at the end of the 22 season? Was it a MCL tear?
It's definitely a knee injury of some kind. I don't remember what it was, to be honest with you. Maybe Justin, if you're listening, you can let us know what it was. But it just felt like he wasn't 100% healthy when you did watch him run. And even when he was running, he wasn't getting the ball, and Jonnu Smith was getting the ball. So it's just like it was like the worst possible scenario for Pitts this year. And I still like him. I still think he's got it. Like it's like,
I mean, he's still like what, like 21, 22? He's 23.
Yeah, I mean, like
23.3.
He's younger than Luke or Dalton Kincaid was when he was drafted last year. Like it's I still want him. Like he's still a good player. It's just it hasn't changed. Nothing about the player has changed for me. It's just the situation is so bad. And I have him in another I don't think another dynasty league I have him. And it's just I can't you can't move him because his value's not what it should be based on the talent. It's tough.
All right, shout out Draft Sharks for injury reports. Thank you, Draft Sharks. Not a sponsor.
We'll take your sponsorship though. We'll take it.
November 20th, 2022. Knee MCL tear, grade 3.
So, I mean, that's a pretty big injury.
That's decent way into the 2022 season. Comes back. You say he looks injured. MCL, ACL is kind of like you're not fully yourself 18 months, probably.
No, probably not.
Unless you're Adrian Peterson. Like, so I still believe.
Justin says, a bruise on the leg is a hell of a long way from the heart. That's a good one.
What's that from? Is that Miracle?
I'm gonna look it up.
Justin, tell me what movie
a bruise that's from. On the leg. I think
that's from the fucking.
It's from the Miracle movie.
Yes.
And then he says candy ass afterwards.
What'd you call me?
What'd you call me?
You heard me.
Oh man. Anywho, yeah, I don't know. So let's. I mean, we know what the situation is now. It's Zach Robinson is the OC now there with Raheem Morris.
I love anything coming from the Sean McVay.
It can't possibly get worse, can it?
I don't know. Ask Pittsburgh.
I don't know, man. Dude, I just can't see a reason that Pitts would not be featured. I just there's no logic to anything that Arthur Smith did, and I can't imagine Zach Robinson gets hired if he didn't have a good plan for him. Like it's just or any of these weapons.
It's very difficult to be an elite tight end in fantasy football if you're not a top 2 option in your offense. Fair?
Yeah, that's pretty fair. And if you I would say he's a better player than London is though. Like overall. Like he's a bigger mismatch, and you could do more with that talent at tight end than Drake London at receiver.
I don't know if he's better than London. London's really good.
I love London too, though. That's the thing. Like I'm way too high on Pitts still. Probably it's probably just a me problem. But
Pitts is athletic freak.
He's just a complete freak. Every time you see him catch a ball, it's like this guy is so different. So why don't we just get him the ball more? And they just don't do it. So I don't know. Maybe he's just like a Jagaloon off the scenes. Like I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. It's just
I can't imagine him being more than the third guy behind London and Bijan, though.
It seems very unlikely, extremely unlikely. So he's going to get his targets unless Jonnu Smith comes out firing again. Who knows?
Who's that again?
Could you imagine how pissed? Falcons fans would be if Zach Robinson comes in and just like disregards Kyle Pitts for Jonnu Smith again? It would be hilarious. I would love it.
for the first like 12 weeks of the season was the greatest face football call of my life.
I really can't think of a better one.
Whew,
It was an unbelievable flag plant. It was hilarious.
man,
You deserve the kudos for that one.
yeah. He still finished ahead of Johnny Smith though.
But but if anybody watched the games, you just know that was.
Yeah, it's not like anybody was excited to have Pitts.
No, not even a little bit. All right, let's talk about some of these other guys. So let's go next to Garrett Wilson. He was only a disappointment just because of the quarterback situation. He still played great.
Look at any advanced metric, and he was one of the 10 best receivers in football last year.
Yeah, I mean he's a stud gets, and it's crazy because I think he still finished with almost 1,100 yards. It just had no touchdown production. It's not his fault. It's just not his fault. So we'll move on. Quentin Johnson will just go there with me. That was as bust as a bust first season could possibly get. And it's funny because like he had like a few games where it was like, okay, he got on the stat sheet, but then when you watch those games, there was absolutely nothing to inspire you at all from that game. So it's just like it's like a devastating pick. It's just so bad.
I'll take my victory lap on that one. I probably, if I had like a end of the first round pick, I probably still would have ended up picking him.
Just on the capital, right?
He was definitely, yeah, but he was definitely of that group of receivers in the rookie draft last year. I remember having him last and catching not like heat from everybody, but definitely everybody disagreeing with me on that one because I was a big Zay Flowers guy.
Zay Flowers really panned out this year for sure. Well, I'm sure we'll talk about him in a minute here as well. But from my team, when I ended up making that trade, I kind of viewed Addison as the safer of the bunch. And then I kind of viewed Quentin Johnson as the boom bust guy, like maybe this will hit. So like it was kind of a nice balancing act there, I thought in my head, but clearly it didn't work out.
I will say like the way he came into the NFL as far as like his skill set compared to like how he was being used in that offense, I disagree with a lot. Like
he should have been used in like a Rashee Rice role.
Exactly.
And they didn't do that. They used him like as a boundary threat, which is probably a Brandon Staley problem, if anything.
And yeah, well, I mean, it was Kellen Moore's
or Kellen Moore, yeah.
But, super excited for that. Thank you.
Yeah, seriously.
But I mean, that might have just been the role that they needed for the offense. Maybe they just didn't have anybody else after injuries and stuff. I don't know.
It was weird. The whole thing felt weird. I mean, he's getting locked up by every outside corner he played. Like it just didn't look good at all. Mm-hmm. But maybe he gets a second shot this year. Who knows? Like it was a rough go. But they're definitely going to add some sort of help as in the passing game. You'd imagine with that high pick. So
yeah, I think they have an out. They have an out on Mike Williams' contract, I believe.
I think they do, and honestly, Palmer played pretty solid for them as well. So like, I feel like it'll just be, those top two guys, unless they add like a Bowers maybe or a Neighbors if he makes it there.
I don't remember if Keenan Allen was under contract or if he's a free agent, but like keep him around for like one more year.
Yeah, I think he's coming back.
For all the younger guys, and then you kind of start to move in the different direction.
Yeah, he's been very good. All right, so let's talk about some of these other guys. Javonte Williams this year. You could talk about him. You had him on your team prior to the year before making the trade, and
I'll just copy and paste the Kyle Pitts defense. Like same thing. The guy destroyed his knee the year before.
Sure did.
But I was hoping maybe like peak or like break out a little more in the second half of the year, and it just felt like he kind of broke down a little more. So we'll see what next year brings. Maybe he'll come out fresh. It wouldn't surprise me if Sean Payton shook things up a little bit, though, in the backfield. So I'm curious to see what happens there.
Yeah, it was a pretty rough year for him. I mean, he only had 770 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 3.57 yards a carry is not great.
Yeah, they invested a lot into the run game last offseason, too. Not like every offensive lineman they brought in was pretty good in the run game, not great in pass protection. So to not see them do more in the running game was a little disappointing.
Yeah, and they actually did have like some reasonable threats as like to not stack the box too. So it's not like, Russell was getting them killed at the line of scrimmage every play. They had some guys like even
theoretical threats. We can transition that into another guy that's on this list.
Sure, go for it. Live your dreams.
Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah.
the one from Dan's team.
Yeah, Jerry Jeudy. I actually want to go pull up that trade just because I forgot exactly what the details were. The plague. Jerry Jeudy. Yeah, so Jerry Jeudy finishes as the number 50 receiver, 758 yards, only 2 touchdowns, didn't get to 100 targets. Just not a good year at all after coming off of a number 18 overall season, almost 1,000 yards and 6 receiving touchdowns. So the trade was Jeudy, A.J. Dillon, and Kadarius Toney for a 25 first, a 26 second, and Albert O. So right now, doesn't look too great for Dan's side of the trade, in my opinion. But there's, I guess, potential if Jeudy makes his way out of Denver and maybe latches on to another team. He's only 24 years old. So, I mean, there's still like, it's another case of this guy's, get drafted at 20 years old. There's still time for him, but it hasn't been anything really other than maybe last year to like be excited about, right? Like I'm not feeling it anymore. Are you feeling it, Mr. Krebs?
I'm not. Jeudy was probably one of my biggest misses in redraft last year. I really liked that going in.
The fit seemed right.
Yeah, you would assume that Sutton may have been like the odd man out. Tim Patrick gets hurt. So I don't know
Patrick was tough.
why it didn't work there. Steve Smith fucking hates that guy. I don't
really does.
Hates.
It's unbelievable. All right, let's talk about Austin Eckler. Just nothing went right for the Chargers this year. I feel like he kind of got looped into that as well.
Early season, high ankle sprain, 29-year-old.
He's old, yeah. He's up there now. Let me look.
It's tougher to come back from as you get older.
At least 29. 28. So he'll be 29 next season. But he just wasn't good. I mean, he averaged 3.5 yards a carry with Justin Herbert for most of the year. I mean, it's just the receiving numbers were way down.
I think he got hurt and he just came back too early. I think is
probably forced him back into the lineup.
Probably what happened, yeah.
I don't know. It was a rough go for him. I mean, he's going to be a free agent. It'll be interesting to see where he ends up, but I don't think his value will ever really get back up to that top status from the last 2 seasons where he was running back 2 and 4. I think those days are over.
I think somebody's going to get him in a value contract NFL-wise. So maybe like a smart team will get somebody that they can utilize. Maybe that could help his value.
I mean, I was thinking like, well, you said smart team, and my idea kind of went out the window. I thought the Cowboys would be a nice little spot for him as like a.
That screams Derrick Henry to me.
I think they just want another Gruden's grinder again. I think they just want just some big old butt just to go out there and just grind it out for 4 yards like Zeke did all those years. I think that's kind of what they want again. Like, I mean, even McCarthy going back to the Green Bay days with like Eddie Lacy, like those kind of guys. Like, it seems like. I mean, just say what you want about Eddie Lacy, but I just think they like that style where at least McCarthy does, where it's like a big bruising kind of back. So
yeah, for sure.
All right, so T. Higgins, also not a great year, especially given what people thought. I mean, honestly, the Bengals, the first like quarter of the year were just like non-existent. I'm trying to pull up his stats too.
Another case of Burrow coming back too injured to play, and then
he got hurt in training camp.
Yeah, just kind of avalanching from there, which is hilarious because if he would have just not played and let Browning play, like he looked fine.
Browning looked fine, yeah.
He probably could have kept them like around 500.
Yeah, and that's all you want your backup to do anyways, just be 500 basically.
Yeah, instead absolutely laying an egg against the Browns week 1.
And I hate to even really call it like a disappointing season for Higgins. I mean, he was hurt a lot as well. He only played in 12 games, and then a good majority of those games were when Joe Burrow wasn't even in the lineup. So it's hard to call him a disappointment, but it's not really how he'd want to go into a contract year, though.
Had an absolutely sick touchdown catch this year.
He sure did. That was one of the best,
mm-hmm.
if not the best. I mean, that was awesome.
I mean, for that reason alone, he shouldn't be on this list.
I mean, he just feels like a guaranteed Carolina Panther. Just he's going to take the bag. I mean, it makes too much sense. I mean, his other options, I guess, like from a value, you'd want to see him go to like the Chiefs maybe, or the Cowboys.
New England.
I don't know if I like New England too much
Well,
from a fantasy perspective.
if they take a quarterback at 3,
Yeah, okay, then that helps. But right now it doesn't look good.
I think it just depends. Like whatever they end up doing, because free agent. I've already asked this question twice on the pod. Free agency is before the draft.
That is correct. Yes, in
So I
March.
guess depending on what they do in free agency is going to tell a lot about what they want to do in the draft.
I mean, they have to add at least one receiver to that room, regardless.
Yeah, and they need
So,
to add,
like,
they have to add a quarterback because they can't start either of those quarterbacks from last year.
I don't think you can
Nobody-
unless they go like the cheap ish market.
I said last pod Jacoby Brissett,
That kind of makes sense.
and then dude,
Just tank another year.
sign Higgins and draft Marvin Jones Jr.
Sign Higgins, draft Marvin, tank another year.
Marvin Jones.
I love Marvin Jones. You know that.
Marvin Harrison.
I'm not going to correct you when you say Marvin Jones.
The damn juniors.
He's not going to be as good as Marvin Jones.
Who is?
Marvin Jones had a 5-touchdown performance.
He sure did.
Don't forget that. Don't forget it. He was fun. He was a fun player. All right. Then we have Tony Pollard. I guess that kind of goes back to the Mike McCarthy talk. What a disappointment, honestly. That was a tough one.
The big disappointment in fantasy this year. I feel like any
people had him so high.
Any research like anybody did into like redraft this year, every like fantasy football like pundit was like, "Yep, Tony Pollard, RB
league winner, league winner. This is the guy to take."
Tough.
And that did not materialize. And he's a free agent as well, coming off the franchise tag. Have a hard time believing the Cowboys are going to bring him back. It was a rough year. It was not good for him. And unfortunately, Scavelli really needed him to be that player, considering the trade that he made with James just before the season. It was a first-round pick and Gerald Everett for Tony Pollard and a couple of fourths. So, I mean, unfortunately, that didn't really work out for Scavelli this year. He finished as RB 18? Yeah, 18. So he finished with 1,000 yards and 6 touchdowns. Yeah. But, I mean...
It's saying a lot because he wasn't awful.
No.
It felt real bad all year.
It just felt worse because the expectations were so high.
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, he averaged 4 yards a carry, but the year before he had 5.22 yards per carry. He actually had 2 more yards last year on the ground than he did this year, which is crazy. Like that with 160 more carries this year. That's pretty nuts. All right, so let's get into the last guy, Miles Sanders. I mean, he got a big contract from the Panthers' previous regime. Clearly did not work out at borderline at all. I mean, I drafted him in redraft, and I thought I was going to get at least like, a flex-worthy player. He was not usable for most of the season. It was terrible.
Yeah. Of everything that happened in Carolina this last year, I thought they were going to be able to run the ball like a little bit.
They did not run the ball. I mean, Chuba actually looked decent when he got in there, but they also don't have an offensive line. So it's like they just didn't have any talent there.
The end of 22, they were great on the ground.
I don't know what happened.
Everybody.
But they just didn't have, like this year, they just didn't have any mojo at all offensively. Like the team was just lost.
They brought back everybody on the offensive line from the year before. It doesn't make any sense. They were down like a starter for like.
They just weren't good. None of them were good.
Went in there and said, "Fuck y'all, let's do a different like scheme for this offensive line and run game." I don't know. But he ruined those guys. They were awful.
It was just the worst case scenario for all Panthers, everything. And I guess except for Adam Thielen, who got bazillions of targets. But I mean, geez, what a waste.
When I was down in Florida last week, I was screwing with my dad. I was like, "You ready for Frank Reich to come back and be the OC for the Eagles next year?" Every day I would say
it wasn't like out of the question.
No, because no.
I mean, it was like totally a viable.
Sirianni loves that guy. I assumed he was going to be on the coaching staff this year coming up. But
I'm surprised he didn't. He might still get an OC job. Like, there's still a chance.
I don't think Sirianni had anything to do with those hires.
They didn't seem like very Sirianni hires. Like,
I think that was straight up Lori. Just
like here's you can stay, but I'm going to do all this.
You're getting this guy and you're getting that guy. Also, 2 very good choices. I mean,
like very highly thought of choices for sure.
Both guys that have been coordinators or head coach for multiple seasons, not first-year coordinators, definitely by design. But
it's kind of funny that like those 2 hires specifically are like probably the most talked about people in the media as well. So it would really add up for like the owner to be like, okay, you're picking that guy and you're picking that guy because the media just told him basically to do that. Like it makes too much sense. So it's a weird
They
one.
do that a lot. So I mean,
They're watching the news. They know
listen,
what people are saying.
yeah, they do much more than like other teams do for sure. But I mean, that being said, they're still not bad hires. I think Vic Fangio, for all the injuries he had in Miami last year, I thought he did pretty good because
I
they were
mean, great during the regular
decimated by
season
the
for
end of the year.
sure.
Yeah.
They were really good, and they got injured a lot, like you said. Like they had a lot of problems throughout the year. With people getting banged up. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I wouldn't have let him go personally, but
I'm sure Vince or Justin can let us know. But I doubt at any point this last year they had all 11 of their projected starters in their lineup.
I highly doubt it. I mean, I love Jalen Phillips too. He went down. I know Jalen Ramsey was hurt for a while. I mean, it was tough out there. Xavier Howard got banged up, I think, too. I mean, they just didn't
They
have
lost their both safeties at some point.
both
Too.
safeties. That great safe. They just have a good defense, man. They're just a good quality defense, but they just did not show up in that playoff game at all. All right, let's go into a few of the survey questions that I have out here. So let's start with the most disappointing team. And once again, we only had 9 total votes because Dustin did not make it to the survey.
Thanks, Dustin.
So here's the most disappointing teams. The Lionheads received 3 votes. The Bombers received 3 votes. The Muskrats received 2, and the Plague received 1. I think these are all 4 choices that make sense to me. Probably the Lionheads, right? Just based on the preseason hype and the additions that they made right before the season started. It felt really good. Just didn't quite work out.
Yeah, I think you try and if I'm remembering correctly, like I tried to balance it more on like who is less reliant on like injuries for the reason their team was struggling, and more like the players that they put their chips on like didn't necessarily hold up as much to what they were bargaining on.
Right. Yeah,
So,
and that makes sense.
I think maybe like that makes Alex's team probably the winner of that. I feel like a few of the players that he was really betting on, T. Higgins in particular. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
he was there, he was playing.
a lot of those guys just didn't do it. And it's funny because for Alex's team too, he got that, league winner guy like Puka, and it still really didn't help. That shows you kind of the production of those other guys. Maybe just didn't quite live up to the hype there. But
started the season with Waddle. Waddle was playing pretty banged up like all year, but that's another guy that was just struggling.
Yeah, I mean, he did not put it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I think Alex would probably be my second choice behind the Lionheads. Even but the Bombers though, they drive a hard bargain though. When you're talking about disappointing teams, they do it every year. So, I mean, like Joe Burrow was a huge disappointment. Like that just did not work out the way it was supposed to. But like you said, a lot of those guys also were injured too, and that didn't help the cause. So, all right, let's talk about teams that need a shakeup. One of my favorite questions. So the Battle Axes received 4 of the votes. The Plague got 2, the Bombers got 2, and the Muskrats got 1. Frankly, I don't know how the Muskrats can even shake it up at this point because they just don't have anything really to work with.
Shake it up or blow it up, I guess. Again.
Hey, blow it up again.
We're doing it again.
Let's do it again. So let's start at the top of the Battle Axes. I think I voted for the Battle Axes. The team.
Pretty sure I did too.
It just doesn't have it anymore. I mean, I don't know how else to say it.
They get long in the tooth, man.
They get long in the tooth.
30-ish players on that roster.
I mean, he has by far the oldest roster. I actually have a Dynasty League ranker thing that we'll probably bring up on one of the podcasts coming up soon, but it kind of goes over all the different ages of all the teams and like how all that looks. And Scavelli's team was by far the oldest. And I think with Scavelli's team too, like at the receiver position, doesn't quite have any younger guys really to rely on right now. And he could still, get some value out of some of the other guys on his roster if he wants to make a shakeup, such as like a Saquon or maybe a Derrick Henry if they end up in different situations.
I think the moment Saquon signs somewhere, if he wants to do anything, that's going to be, assuming it's like a good landing spot, that would be peak value, and I would just
walk
if
out.
I'm looking to sell, that's when I would sell.
Yeah, I feel like if Barkley ends up in a good situation, he's going to command some pretty serious return. Maybe not Derrick Henry as much, just because there's so much wear on the tires. But he could still fetch a decent penny too if he ends up in a good spot.
Houston.
Man, that would be a crazy one. That running game, dude, that offense would be stupid good. It would be so fun to watch. I actually care about the Texans again if that happens.
Baltimore doesn't put money into running backs, but that one would also be a.
I mean, I think any Baltimore running back, and then perhaps any San Diego back this year, because Jim Harbaugh just loves the run so much. I could see if they both went to each one of those teams, then Scavelli's in a great spot.
Yeah. Derrick Henry to Baltimore was trending a lot during the trade deadline. I think maybe if he wants to go and try and win a championship, he might do a discount and sign with the Ravens. But
I mean, the Ravens feels like a Derrick Henry location. I could see him in the uniform. It just makes total sense. So, and then the Plague, they also could use a shakeup too. If you look at, kind of the way things have happened, and his running backs, like you were talking about, maybe being a little bit more depleted now than ever. Maybe shaking up some of the other players, such as his two great tight ends, maybe one of the receivers. He's got some folks at quarterback too that maybe could get moved around. There's definitely room for a shakeup there, but not a whole lot of draft capital to do with. And then the Bombers, they will shake it up every once in a while, but not a team that trades a whole lot. So I'm not sure if you'll see it from the Bombers again this year. I mean, obviously they have the 1-1, probably going Marvin Harrison. I have a hard time believing he's going to make a shakeup there at all. I think that's just going to be a stick and pick situation. But there's still room maybe for if he wants to fidget around with some of the lower level players. So we'll have to see. And then the Muskrats, like we said, I don't know how he shakes it up at this point, unless he trades off younger guys like a Jalen Waddle or a Puka. I can't really see it happening.
He already traded Waddle. Tibbs is Waddle.
That's right. He's already gone. He's already gone. He didn't even make it. It's just unbelievable. Every young player he gets 3 seasons tops on Alex's roster. That's it. That's all you get. So Puka, enjoy the next 2 years, but you're out of here soon.
I would be curious to see how much, going back to Dan's team, if you just traded Justin Jefferson, what would you get?
I mean, you have to get at least 4 firsts worth of value at minimum. Yeah. Whether it be through players or picks or whatever. But I mean, Bijan, in my opinion, deserved 4 firsts when he came out. And I think he's not any different than that. Probably even more because he was proven. So, I mean, it would be a crazy haul, but I don't know who in the league would really do that. So it'd be an interesting.
I mean,
it'd have to be Tibbs actually has the capital for something like that, and he has the players now in the depth to pull something off. But it's just hard to get away from a player that good. I just know.
I'll let them enter the chat room themselves.
But they can go to the Dynasty backroom chat.
Nudge them along,
Trying to ship that relationship, huh?
Yeah. Hey, we need off-season hype, Eric.
Listen, we can drive as much hype as we want, but they still have to go talk.
We drive the content around here, all right? We got to make it happen.
We control the narrative. We write the script. Oh, my God. All right, so what team misses the playoffs that made it this year? And the Battle Axes were 8 choice out of 9. And then the Cheese Fries, that had to be a hater comment.
Wow.
I want to know who submitted that. It had to be a hater. Because the Cheese Fries, I feel like they're very well set up for next year.
I bet even Scavelli voted for his team. This is bullshit.
That's a good question. I should look, but hey, I'll let you know later. But all right. So let's talk rookie of the year. So I split it up this year by round because frankly, there were so many great players this year, and every year for that matter. It was hard to just name one.
Yes, I completely understood this assignment when you first sent it out, and I didn't ask 2 very stupid questions.
And it was probably me not fleshing things out again. But anywho, this is split up by rounds. So picks 1 through 10, 11 through 20, so on and so forth. So that's the way I split it up. And your round 1 rookie of the year, as voted on by the league, was Jahmyr Gibbs. And that seems pretty undisputable in my opinion. I don't, maybe you could choose, visit Flowers. Maybe you could choose Achane when he played. It's a weird one.
I think that's the one. I mean, it's tough because Bijan didn't have a bad year.
No, not even at all. I mean,
1,300 total yards. Like,
it's just the hype was so big. It was so big. I mean, Gibbs towards the end of the year really, put it on a real show and turned into what everybody thought he would be. Finished his rookie, finished his rookie year at running back 10, averaged 5.19 yards per carry, 945 yards on the ground, and 10 touchdowns, which was awesome. And then 316 yards on the receiving end of things too. So he had about 1,200 yards and 11 touchdowns total. So that's a pretty great year from any running back, considering Gibbs missed 2 games, weeks 5 and 6, and really wasn't super involved in the first 3 or 4 weeks either. So could have been even better. So he's going to be a stud next year. I mean, I'm sure everybody's already clamoring and lining up to get him in redraft leagues. So he'll be a great player. Round 2 was Rashee Rice. There was a couple of votes also, 1-2 votes for Jaden Reed, which I thought were obviously warranted. He was finished as the rookie, he's finished his rookie year at wide receiver 18. Rashee Rice really didn't do a whole lot early on in the year, but really turned it on towards the second half when the Chiefs offense started taking off again. Frankly, not the role that I thought Rashee Rice was going to be used when I drafted him. I did not see him being kind of that over the middle Juju Smith-Schuster role. That's just not what I thought he was going to be.
I doubt that that's what they thought he was going to be too, but they just
needed something. Yeah, like anybody with some juice. I mean, frankly, his run after catch ability is something that I didn't really even see in college when I watched his SMU tape. It didn't really look like that.
So fast with the ball in his hands.
Incredibly fast. It has a lot of wiggle too. I mean, I just didn't see that when I watched him. I mean, he was mostly a boundary player at SMU, so it's a lot of just going up over people, but he really looked good with the ball in his hands.
Yeah, he dominated against zone coverage this year. Like, he was elite against zone. Kelsey is great against zone. And my mind, this is off on a tangent because my mind is telling me this offseason they should get another receiver. And there's one receiver that's a free agent that is just elite against man, is terrible against everything else.
Sounds like it could be Mike Evans.
Mike Evans is good against everything.
He's really good against man, though. I don't know. That's a good question. I'm trying to think of the other free agent options. I don't know. You have to give it to me. I don't want to keep the fans waiting.
His name is Hollywood Brown.
Ooh, and that's a very Chiefs player.
Chiefs, he had a terrible year because he was injured all year.
Get him on a discount.
Chiefs
discount.
And you just put him on the verticals when they end up getting man coverage next year. Kelsey, another year older, get him some more space.
And that just makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. You get him, you keep Kelsey, and then maybe you get another outside guy that's a little taller, that's not named Marquez Valdes-Scantling. And then,
but they're paying him too much money, Eric. They have to keep him on.
They're paying him a lot of money. We talked about this on another podcast.
We talked about it after one of the podcasts one night. I don't even think it was
like $30 million.
It's so much money.
It's just how's this happening? Who let that happen? But they do need somebody with more size on the boundaries. That's the one thing.
True.
I mean, honestly, same thing for the Cowboys, to be honest with you. But yeah, I mean, Brown would be such a natural fit there, and like you said, the discount that he'll probably get after not having a great year this year, it really adds up.
Sorry, tangent. Round. We can get around.
It's a quality tangent right there. Round 3 was Sam Laporta. He received the majority of the vote. However, there were 2 votes for CJ Stroud as well, which is totally acceptable. Laporta blew my socks off. He blew everybody's socks off, I would imagine.
Best rookie tight end ever.
I mean, literally just right out the gate, just playing at such a high level. Was the number 1 tight end this year, 889 yards and 10 touchdowns, which 120 targets for your rookie season at tight end is pretty amazing. It's just he was the number 2 guy all year long in this offense, and I have a hard time believing that's going to change because Ben Johnson's sticking around. I mean, unless they just start feeding Jameson way more targets, which I don't see happening.
I think they really created a specific role for Jameson Williams.
I think so too. You saw at the end of the year.
It's a very highly efficient role, but I don't think it's a very high volume role.
Yeah, I feel like it's like a Jeremy Maclin type role, like one of those like just get
Yeah,
the ball in his hands every once in a while kind of guys, but not like force feed him targets. Like I think there's value, especially more in real life probably than there is in fantasy. But Sam Laporta is the second receiver on this team. I mean, that's
yeah,
pretty obvious.
he's dominant in the middle of the field. Like even so, like Amon-Ra moved more outside this year than he ever has,
Yeah,
just so that it would complement him more.
It just made sense. Like the offense, the Ben Johnson's a really good coach. That's just what it comes down to.
Loyal as hell.
He's very loyal. I mean, I love Laporta coming into the draft. I should have picked him honestly before Mayer, but I didn't. I know Vince loved him. A lot of people really liked him coming into the draft, but nobody expected this kind of production. I mean, this is pretty amazing. He's going to go into next year as the number 1 tight end, and it'll be a great time for all. And round 4, we all know it's Puka. There were no other choices, I don't believe, for number 4. If there was, I'd have a word to say. There was not. So let's go into the waiver draft rookie of the year. It's Dontavian Wicks. We just talked about him.
Love that guy.
Dontavian Wicks got four of the votes. We also have 2 votes for Keaton Mitchell, which is a nice little shout out. And then Trey Palmer, Parker Washington, Tucker Kraft also got a vote. So like Dontavian Wicks is a guy that to me he's very interesting heading into next season because, like you said, it's the who's actually. I don't think there is like a pecking order. I just feel like it's a game plan thing.
Did you see the statistic dump that Sleeper had with receivers on one-on-ones?
I did not, but I know he's very good.
They posted like the top 10 and bottom 10 receivers against like what their win percentage was against one-on-one coverage, and number 1 in the NFL was Dontavian Wicks.
That's unreal. That's so crazy.
They're like 55 or 56% or something.
Dude, Dontavian Wicks he's the truth, man. I think I watched this tape a lot last year heading out of West Virginia, and he did a lot of things really well, but I was always like, he could be better, and it never really like jumped out on tape. But then now you see him making these insane plays every week, and it's like, all right, I guess this guy's a guy, and I missed this one too. But I'm trying to see what his numbers were. So he ended up finishing 581 yards, 4 touchdowns. Really was not involved much for the first, 10 weeks, it looks like. Really turned it on at the end of the year, though. Got a bunch of targets towards the end of the year. So, I mean, he's going to head into next year with the increased role for sure. I don't know. He just seems like a great pickup there. And it's funny because Alex Morales was the one to draft him in the waiver draft, but cut him in July, so didn't make the first roster cut, and then Vince picked him up and has reaped the benefits. So Alex also cut James Robinson too in the waiver draft a couple of years ago. So maybe you should start keeping some of your waiver draft picks. I mean,
this guy,
it's tough out here. All right, well that's an hour. We'll wrap it up for today. I'm gonna look and see. I think next week we were gonna talk a little bit about the Super Bowl. We were gonna talk about the Senior Bowl now that that's gonna be over. Also had some Shrine Game talk. There's not a ton to talk about this year with the Shrine Game, but just a couple of guys probably. And then I was going to see if we can get into the trade trees, Sean. So if you're bored and looking for things to do, start researching some of those trades, from years past. So for those that don't know, a trade tree is essentially just like you start with one player at the top, and then you make little branches of what the trades turn into over time. So like one of my favorite ones is like Kendall Wright. I turned into a 4th and Lamar Miller, and then that turned into like a bunch of other assets. So it's fun just to see like what the trades end up turning into. I think this year the most fun one would be like Breece Hall, because he's been traded like 4 times, but like the amount of value that is spurred out of Breece Hall is insane. So that's kind of what I would like to see. So we'll try to get that podcast in next week before the Super Bowl. If not, it'll be just after the Super Bowl, and we can actually talk about the game maybe. So we'll get to that, but we're going to do that. And then the one after that is going to be Dine Around the Horn. We're bringing it back, probably with a different format this time, but we're going to bring it back, and we're going to have a good debate, probably about a lot of the discussions from last week, or maybe some discussions as we head into the off season, like which teams need to shake it up. And we'll see if we can get some riled up owners to start losing their minds on the podcast again. That's what everybody wants to see. So, all right. So that is it. Sean, you got anything else for today?
And that's it. I got nothing for you.
Nothing for me. All right. Well, hopefully you have something for me next time. And we will see you all on episode 58. See you later.